What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. All right, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have quite a few things to discuss with you today, starting with our area of interest in the main development region and our potential Central American gyre threat from the Climate Prediction Center and some potential ensembles that we might be going ahead and showing. So we have quite a lot to talk to you about today, but before we do, Helene documentary is finally out. Please go check it out if you haven't already. It'd be much appreciated. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it right here. Starting off right here, this is what we have from the National Hurricane Center. This is what we got for you right here. We already have a pretty big chance of tropical development, especially in the long term. So let's go ahead and get through this right here. We'll do some satellite analysis, and then we'll look at the conditions and kind of keep this in mind. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it. Recent satellite-derived wind data indicate that a broad area of low pressure associated with a tropical wave has formed several hundred miles south of the Cabo Verde Islands. Environmental conditions appear conducive for gradual development of the system, and it could become a tropical depression by the middle to latter part of next week while moving across the central tropical Atlantic and approaching portions of the Leeward Islands. 10% chance in the next 48 hours. 60% chance in the next 7 days. So we're going to have to watch out, and we're going to want to watch this, especially as this heads towards the Antilles. And I have looked at some of the ensembles, and they have shifted further to the south as well. So we're definitely going to want to watch this, especially if this puts more of the islands in the line of fire. Now we're going to go ahead and go to our satellite imagery. We're going to go ahead and go to our region right here in the Eastern Atlantic. This came off the coast of Africa yesterday, I believe, and what we were looking at right here is this tropical wave, a pretty robust tropical wave to start off as well. And it already is showing a bit of an outflow channel popping up south of the Cabo Verde Islands. But the main thing to note with this right here is just, number one, how large this AOI is and just how broad it is too. You do see some convection starting to pop up here and there near the center where the NHC has marked it, but ultimately you have a lot of convection and you have a lot of area to deal with. And one thing I would be more concerned about with is also the dry air. The good news is that the larger and more robust the system, the better it can battle it, and the longer it'll take for it to get for dry air to penetrate it and disrupt it as greatly as it would with a smaller system. But the bad news is, at least in terms of the storm's development, it's going to take more time to consolidate and potentially develop once it gets to the central main development region. And looking at water vapor imagery, as soon as that pulls up right here, hold on, it's taking its time for tropical tidbits. There we go. And taking a quick gander at this right here, it's in a pretty moist environment at this current point in time dealing with it right there. You do have a little bit of a dry air slot over here, but where the center of circulation is and where those storms are popping up, it's going to remain further to the north of it. However, I do see this maybe being a slight hindrance early on, but as time goes on and as that fills in and as more of convection and this starts to consolidate, it will become less of an issue, especially as it heads towards the western half of the main development region. So that is something you're going to want to consider, and that is something that you are going to want to keep in mind. But by and large, the situation you're looking at right here is pretty favorable for tropical development. You have plenty of moisture, you have lots of warm water to work with, and a lot of other avenues to take a look at as well. But ultimately, the main thing I'm concerned about is the potential impacts towards the Lesser Antilles, and that's something that you're going to want to keep a close eye on, and definitely something you're going to want to pay attention to in the long run at this current point. And looking at true color imagery, it does look like it is going to be sunset in parts of off the coast of parts of Africa and where this system is. And I am very curious to see how this will ultimately pan out going into the evening hours. Because once the sun sets and once we get towards closer and closer towards diurnal maximum in that part of the world, my main question will be, okay, are we going to start seeing a situation where we start seeing more convection blow up? Because if we do start seeing more of that convection firing off in the evening, that would be a very big indicator as to what exactly is going on with this right here, and kind of how much this system has in terms of its juice, in terms of its fight ability to deal with any bad conditions as well. The one thing I am curious also about is, will it be popcorn convection, where convection that fires up over a couple of hours and then starts to die down? Or will this be more sustained convection? Because based on what I'm seeing, the only sustained convection I am noticing is mainly the stuff that is detached to the intertropical convergence zone. But other than that, there's not as much of a factor to that as well. So you're definitely going to want to keep a very close eye on this right here. But I want to see how that convection fires up during diurnal maximum and how it holds in the next day or so. So those are going to be two important areas to watch for as well. But I want to go ahead now and show some ensemble runs with this, because there have been some interesting shifts over the last little while that I do want to get into. So pulling up the ensemble runs, we're first going to go ahead and go to the North Atlantic, and then we're going to go ahead and go to the 0Z, and then switch it over to the European ensembles right here. Here is what you got going on for the 10-day forecast. I actually want to go ahead and start back at 4 days, so this would be for October 8th, just to get a general idea of what's going on. And I do want to see if the 12Z data isn't quite in at the time of recording this, but I do have the 0Z data to show for you guys right here. So what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna go ahead and zoom in on this. We're gonna zoom in this part of the region right here, and then we're gonna kind of give you an idea of what we might be looking at. So here's what we have 4 days out, and already you have the system consolidating. A lot of the ensembles remain relatively weak, but the ones that do develop do produce a lot of power associated with it as well. 966, 975, several more in the below 1,000 millibars as well that you're going to want to pay attention to. And that prompts me to go back to 3 days, which will be October 7th, to just kind of give an idea of what's going on. And you do have a very consistent signal right here. There's no disputing that at this current point. The main question that I have at this current point is, when will this develop and how long will it take at this current point? Because even if you go back to 2 days out, you still have quite a few ensembles tagging this right here, and then starting to consolidate. But then as we get to 3 to 4 days out, you do have this starting to really pop up and really start to turn up on a lot of these ensembles, showing pretty significant tropical development quite early on. And I will say this, based on what we're looking at right here, the stronger the storm is, the further to the north it will shift, in part due to Coriolis force, and in part because it'll be more vulnerable to those low pressure systems in the northern parts of the Atlantic to kind of get yanked to the north. So that'll be definitely something very interesting to watch as well. But then going ahead and going to a 5 days out, right here, my goodness, the systems the ensembles that develop it really turn it up and really pop a lot of his power with this as well. The ones that don't have it developing and taking more of its time kind of get their act together, but are closer towards the Lesser Antilles, so that is something you're going to want to keep in mind as well. But going ahead and going to October 10th, this is pretty interesting. A lot of the ensembles do start to get its act together and start to have the system start to get it develop a little bit, but pretty much there is quite a bit of a spread. The majority of the ensembles do want the Antilles to get impacted, but the spread is from, I believe that is St. Lucia all the way up towards the Virgin Islands over here. So that is quite a significant spread, and you do have some ensembles popping further to the north. And another thing I find interesting is, yes, you do have the more powerful ensembles further to the north, but they're not as far to the north as I was originally anticipating with this. Meaning, if this continues to shift further to the south, we could see a scenario where this could potentially be more of a land threat compared to what we've seen previously. And then going to 7 days out right here, some ensembles do have it going into the Caribbean, but the majority of them have it after the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, starting to move to the north and out to sea. So that is definitely a factor and something you're going to want to consider with that as well. So that's your European. I want to go ahead and show the GFS with this as well. Here's the GFS. So here's the 0Z for you right here. We're going to go ahead and go to 3 days out, popping up as you can see right here. 0Z GFS also pretty concentrated and consolidated as well. I will say with the wind speed, I don't agree with the kind of strength in terms of wind speed because of the pressure. and all that. They're essentially calling for a 1,006 millibar system at I believe, a 50 knot speed in some of these areas right here. That's 60 miles per hour. Pressure to me seems a little bit high for that, especially with how robust the wave is, but definitely something you're going to want to pay attention to. And then as we go to October 8th, right here, the GFS is actually considerably further to the south than what the European is forecasting at 0Z, and considerably more powerful with some of these ensembles right here, at least in terms of the average. You're looking at potentially close to tropical storm and hurricane intensity with the wind speeds. Pressure is a little high, in my opinion, with this, but definitely something to watch for sure. And then as you head towards October 9th, as this heads potentially towards the Leeward Islands. Very concentrated, except for a few outliers, at strong tropical storm to weak hurricane strength with this. And then as we get to 6 days out, which will be October 10th, my goodness, there is still quite a bit of a spread with this, but majority of them actually have it heading towards the Leeward Islands, Antigua, Barbuda, not Barbados, Guadalupe, those areas, but some have it further to the south near Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Martin, and those areas as well. So you're definitely going to want to watch out for that. And then going to October 12th, here's the we do have some impacts potentially with these systems right here. Majority of them do go out to sea after Puerto Rico, but you still have some entering the Caribbean and potentially impacting the Dominican Republic. So there is a bit of a spread with this, and it's really going to depend on the intensity and how strong that high pressure ridge will be over the Atlantic. So that's something interesting to watch. Just to check, I want to see if the 12Z is out. Yes, it is at this current point. So we're going to go ahead and go 2-3 days out to run this, and still a pretty consistent a system with this right here, still relatively consistent right here. But then as we get to 4 days out, already a bit more of a spread and further to the south. Let's go ahead and show you this compared to the 0Z right here. A little bit faster as well and a little bit more spread out, but definitely a bit further to the south is the consensus right here. And then as you head towards October 9th, yeah, that is considerably further to the south right there as it heads towards potentially Guadalupe, Dominica, St. Lucia, those areas in the Windward Islands. It's quite a bit of a shift to the south, as you can see right here, and especially the angle it's approaching at as well. Before it was moving to the west-northwest, now it's moving more so towards the west, at least in general, so we're going to want to watch out for that. 6 days out right here, considerably more ensembles have this impacting land right here. Even some of the more powerful ensembles do as well. So that's going to be pretty curious to see how this will ultimately pan out. Am I saying anything's going to happen right now? Am I saying the Antilles are going to get impacted by this area of interest right now? No. Invest 91L taught us all that we need to know in terms of kind of just looking at models and seeing how this will pan out moving forward, but there is quite a bit of a consensus with this right here, and it's definitely something you're going to want to pay attention to, especially too as the NHC has tagged this. So that's what we have for October 10th. October 12th, majority of the runs start to go out to sea, but you do have more heading towards the Caribbean or impacting more islands in the Lesser Antilles and Puerto Rico. So you're going to want to watch out and see how this will go, but by and large, this is a very concerning situation that we're going to want to deal with. And even checking the the operational runs, you're going to want to see how those will go too. The European is a bit skeptical with its tropical development, not really showing that much happening, at least until it gets out to sea and kind of becomes a remnant low at that point. But the European 0Z ensembles definitely are picking up. So the main question is the ensembles are the ensembles in the right, or is the operational in the right? And is the operational going to catch up to the ensembles in the next couple of days? That'll be very important to watch for as well. And just out of curiosity, I want to see what the European AI model is going for. They are going for some sort of tropical development with this, but staying further to the north and mostly out to sea. Definitely showing a bit of a signal with that you're going to want to pay attention to, and we'll keep you updated on that as well. But here is the GFS for you as well. GFS has been pretty interesting. 12Z GFS has the system as a hurricane, moving mainly out to sea as it intensifies pretty quickly, but you're still going to want to watch out if you're in the Leeward Islands, because this is close enough to give you potential tropical storm conditions similar to what Aaron generated. if the 12Z operational holds. The ensembles have shifted it further to the south, and just for my own information, I do want to look at the 0Z right here, a bit weaker than the 0Z, but also a bit further to the south as well. So that's something that you're going to want to pay attention to as well, and especially as these runs continue to keep to go. So here is the Canadian run. At this current point, looking at this, Canadian has the system strengthening pretty quickly, moving north and mainly out to sea. But as those operational runs generally fall behind the ensembles, we're going to want to pay attention to it right here. And just for context, the 0Z about the same strength, but slight shift to the south as well. So even the Canadian is starting to pick up on that as well. So that's your Canadian run for you guys right here. Here is the Icon. The Icon is not particularly the best model, but I am going to present this anyway just to kind of neatly wrap this up in a nice little bow. But the Icon is pretty interesting. The Icon is by far the strongest hurricane scenario out of all of these. 927 millibars north of the Lesser Antilles. Unless this pulls an Aaron, I don't see that happening, but you never know with this kind of stuff. Right here, you're going to want to pay attention to how this will develop, how this will evolve. My main thing that we need to look at is, number one, this has not even been designated an invest yet. We're going to want to watch out for that. Number two, this hasn't dropped a low-level circulation as well. It's still very broad in the main development region. And number three, we don't exactly know what the conditions will be down the line. I mean, we kind of can give you a general idea of what's been going on, but here is what we have for you with those conditions. We can talk about the water temperatures. We can talk about the OHC that has ahead of it. I will in just a second, but I want to show the wind shear and the moisture component because those are the two most important aspects of this. So here is your wind shear right here. Wind shear actually remains pretty low all the way as it heads towards the Lesser Antilles. You do see a little bit of shear picking up a little bit as it heads towards that region right here, according to the European, mainly staying to the northeast of it right there. But you're going to want to watch that angle as well, because if that outflow can kind of get enhanced by that trough angle, as well as the fact that the system can stay far enough to the south of it, it'll be in good company for some quick intensification if it does start to develop. So that's one thing you're going to want to pay attention to. And I think the main reason they're paying attention to and they're hesitating on the development is the shear in this region right here that you're going to want to pay attention to as well. And then looking at the moisture, based on what I'm seeing, isn't necessarily that big of an issue right here. You have a pretty considerable moisture pocket throughout its entire journey. There is a little bit of dry air surrounding it, but as long as that shear stays away from the core of it and does not infiltrate into the center, it should have no issues developing at this current point, and that's something else that you're going to want to keep in mind moving forward. So that is something to pay attention to right there, and we'll keep you updated on as well. But one last thing I do want to take a look at is the water temperatures and the ocean heat content down the line. Water temperatures where it's at currently is 28 to 29 degrees Celsius at this current point. You're going to want to watch and see how this will ultimately evolve. And then as it heads towards the Lesser Antilles, you're surging to 29 and maybe 30 degrees Celsius. For those of you who are wondering, 30 degrees Celsius is 86 degrees Fahrenheit for those that do not use the metric system in the United States. So that's something to consider as well. And you're also still seeing considerable ocean heat content. And I think this would be the main reason why it holds off its intensification until it gets closer to the Antilles. Mainly because you have a situation where the OHC it's in now is in about like 25 to 50 OHC, then it blows up to 75, then over 100, then 125 OHC as well as it heads towards the Antilles. So that's going to be pretty much rocket fuel for how this system may intensify if it gets that far to the west and it stays out and develops for that long. Also watching the OHC in the Central American Gyre, which will be more talked about in tomorrow's video. I know I didn't get into that. I was mainly focusing on our area of interest, but the Climate Prediction Center is also calling for tropical development in that part as well that we will pay attention to here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I am planning to stream for this tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, so stay tuned for that. Also, in the interim, check out the Hurricane Helene documentary I just published. I put a lot of work, a lot of effort, and if it wasn't for the guys at Storms United, that would not have been possible. So please feel free to take a look at that and subscribe to the channel if you are new, as well as like both this and the documentary. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather, and I'll be back uploading more tropical stuff. I am going to pivot a little bit more so towards winter weather as that's starting to come on the horizon, and I will have a winter weather outlook out pretty soon, so be sure to stay tuned for that. If you'd like to help out, hang out, or ask us questions, feel free to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that will be in the end screen. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.